Hi everyone, welcome to another bass singer reaction and analysis. My name is Peter Barber. I am a professional opera singer, music producer, and of course a bass vocalist. Today we're going to be checking out Nessun dorma. This is from Puccini's Turandot. This comes at the beginning of Act 3 when Prince Calaf is claiming his victory after he has challenged the Queen Turandot to a riddle. So that's just a little bit of the context of what's happening here without going too far into it. A few disclaimers before we get started. So I'm going to try and do two things with this video. I'm going to try and, one, highlight how they do, given that neither of them, are fully trained professional opera singers, and give them a lot of credit for how they do with this really difficult operatic tenor aria, most famously done probably by Pavarotti. I'm sure you've heard other more people who have taken opera more towards the pop world, made it more of a business, like Andrea Bocelli is famous for singing this piece. So that's one side of it. It's going to be giving them praise for how well they do, and they do a great job. And the other side is going to be comparing how they do to what I know as a professional opera singer, and having heard, I've seen this opera at the Metropolitan Opera, and I've heard plenty of professional singers sing this song live. So as a professional opera singer, I feel obliged to pay homage to the people that really do this for a living, and just kind of compare and contrast what Austin and Rob are doing differently. There is going to be a lot of vocal analysis, not as much as I could do. I try to keep these videos under half an hour. This is really my first pure opera video. I've done a lot of Dimash, who sings with classical technique a lot of the time, but this is the first operatic aria that I will be breaking down. Guys, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. If I'm enhancing your listening experience, please consider joining my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Help support me as a young artist. So let's go ahead. So that's the two things. So one, a lot of praise for how they do, given their backgrounds, and two, some comparison to how their singing is versus a professional operatic tenor singing this piece. And I think that's all I need to say before we get started. So let's do it.
Nessun dorma, nessun dorma.
One thing to point off, not about the singing, well, sort of about the singing, clearly not done live, right? I mean, they're lip syncing it live, but this is, if you listen, it's very obviously a studio recording where they have added the space to it. That soundscape wouldn't come from this space they're in. And of course, they're not singing it live with instruments either. The instruments are multi-tracked, and they sang this in a studio, and they're lip syncing here in the video. Just to point that out. So that's one difference already from an opera singer. If you watch Pavarotti sing it, or whoever is in opera, if you were performing Turandot at an opera house, if you're singing the Prince Calaf, this role, you would be singing with no microphones, no amplification, right? And you'd be singing live with orchestra into an opera house. So here, they don't have microphones in the sense of amplification, but of course they use microphones to record it. It basically just means in this setting, you can't really tell voice size, because all these levels have been balanced with the orchestra, and their two voices have been balanced together. So you can't tell how big someone's voice is or how much volume someone is making in a recording context like this. Pretty much like any modern recorded music we hear nowadays. It's the kind of thing you have to hear live, you have to see live to be able to see what elements are louder and what not before they've been mixed and mastered and compressed and all this stuff. Anyway, let's talk about the singing.
Nessun dorma, nessun dorma.
So pretty good, I think. I don't have my iPad, but I think it's D4s to D3s for these notes. And it's not uncommon in the opera world. You'll have tenors that like barely can get down to those D3s. These two really have better low ranges than most operatic tenors because they get down to the D3 quite easily. Now, maybe they recorded this first line in the morning when they have morning voice. Probably not. Probably not. They probably just have good low notes because their style of training. I mean, I remember in an a cappella group, all the guys in the group would sing all the voice parts for fun all the time. So you get kind of training in that way. Whereas an opera singer is going to be very, very specific about training only what they need to perform their craft. So it wouldn't surprise me if these two tenors had stronger low notes than plenty of operatic tenors.
Nessun dorma.
You can't tell a whole lot. It's tough to hear specific qualities. Oh, forgot to set my timer. It's hard to hear specific qualities when two people are singing together. It's a way to blend and kind of make the voices cohesive. And also what's going to be tough here, I'm going to have to assume they're using the same mouth positions as they did when recording. Because if it's lip sync, you can do what you want. You can do whatever you want to make the video look good. But let's just assume they kind of stuck to what they did because that will inform a lot of the choices they make. Vowel position, mouth position is important when singing operatic in the operatic style. What you do notice is when they ascend, I mean, you can tell when they ascend to these D3s, these low notes, that they do lose purity. They lose vocal fold closure in the sound. Again, still maintaining good power for tenors, but you can tell the first note they sing is much more pure as far as vocal efficiency. That means they're getting much better vocal fold closure than they do when they drop the octave.
Nessun dorma. Nessun dorma.
You can hear how the second, those last two were much breathier. There was more air coming through. I do love they're having very Italiano, very Italian like very open and bright. That's how Italians speak. That very open, bright sound. Nessun dorma. It's very bright and open, and I like that they're adhering to that. And that fits right in with, like, honest to God, I did a piece a few years ago called Cold Mountain, based on the book, and we sang the whole thing with country accents. And the country accent really helps get the sound forward and twangy and bright, which can be really, really good in certain cases in opera, because you have to have a ton of cut in the sound to compete with the orchestra, or you'll never be heard. So that twangy, that kind of forward placement that they have from all their years of country singing and also with his years of musical theater singing is actually helpful when you're talking about the cut of a sound, trying to cut through the orchestra, and clearly they are exemplifying that here. Again, we have no idea how much volume they're actually making. Not as much as professional opera singers, that's no question, but you can't tell because it's in the studio. But anyway, wanted to comment on that. Very nice, bright Italian vowel.
Tu pure, o principessa, nella tua fredda stanza, guardi le stelle che tremano d'amore e di speranza.
Well, honestly, the Italian is pretty good. I mean, not perfect, but like pretty good. And Rob, clearly a very, very gifted in this kind of singing. I think, like, based on this talent, if he had chosen opera as his career, as his genre, I think he could have been successful as an operatic tenor. There's just, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what he's doing well here. So, principessa, good. Pessa, it's very Italian, it's good. So what he's doing here, what is so important for operatic singing, as opposed to musical theater or pretty much any other genre, is you have a lowered larynx. This creates space in the pharynx, which creates a warmer, darker sound. So what you have to do for opera is you have to go for a quality called chiaro scuro, which means light and dark qualities in the sound. So you want the darkness from having a wide, an open pharynx, an open gola aperta, an open throat, lowered larynx, open pharynx, and then the chiaro, the brightness of the sound, comes from vocal fold closure and not blocking that sound with your tongue, basically. So you want to get both these qualities. So this is something Rob is doing a really good job of, is he's taking his country background and keeping the presence in the sound while also opening up his throat and allowing more space to create both that light and dark sound at the same time. Now, he's obviously not doing it perfectly, not like a professional singer would, but he's doing a very good job striking that balance for someone who, like I said, didn't pursue opera as his main career. Those first couple notes are really nice and pure. Puria principe. When he goes down to the pesa, he loses a little bit of efficiency in the sound. It gets a little bit breathy compared to those first few notes. This is because when you open up the vowel, it makes it harder, literally by physics, for the vocal folds to come together as well. So it's really easy to get strong vocal fold closure on like an E vowel or an U vowel. If you open up to A, E, these big bright Italian vowels, it's much more difficult to get that really nice vocal fold closure. So you can hear that in his voice. So naturally it starts off nice and pure. When he drops down and opens it up, we lose a little bit of that efficiency. Down there as well, just not quite getting the vocal folds together to maintain the cut you'd probably need in a performance setting with an orchestra. But something he's doing really well is there's so much freedom in his sound. It's just that's one thing that to make it as an opera singer, it's a super powerful sound. It's a full body thing, but it has to be free. And Rob has this super free sound. It's like breath support to vocal folds, and there's nothing grabbing here. It's just a very easy, free spinning vibrato. The balance to strike there is to be able to maintain that really tight vocal fold closure to keep the super efficient sound while keeping the rest of it relaxed, like he's doing. So what we would want more from him if he were singing this on an operatic stage is just more vocal fold closure while keeping that freedom in the sound. But he's really, truly doing an excellent job. Fredda. Is he fretta or fredda? I actually don't know the text. But rolled R's. Frr. Really good. Gotta have the rolled R's in Italian. If it comes after a vowel, gotta roll the R. If it starts a word, roll the R. The time you don't roll an R, or if there's a double R in a word, that's when you roll it too. The time you don't roll an R in Italian is intervocalically. So between two vowels, if there's a single R, you don't roll it. Otherwise, roll it. You can tell, like, when he gets up, he's more comfortable up higher in his range. And his vocal folds really come together nicely for a pure sound. So that word is guardi. He's kind of it's a little he doesn't quite get to the which is because for operatic tenors, this is their second passaggio in their chest voice, right around F sharp. So often what helps tenors navigate that spot of their range is closing the vowel down a little bit. Instead of guardi, you have guardi. That can be helpful. It's the same thing for most voice types in opera to deal with that, but different voice types navigate it differently, and of course the passaggi are in different places for different voices. Like for me, it's about a major third lower than he's dealing with here, where it feels comfortable to close the vowel down a bit. Anyway, I won't get too in the weeds about that. But just listen, when he says guardi, it's more like guardi when he says it. It's really good. He's really doing a great job. To be super picky, so something you go for in opera is you want to have a super, super legatissimo line. You don't want, unless it's written, unless you're doing it come scritto, how it's written in the score, you don't want any kind of pulsing. You want to, so let's find with these words, because he was kind of accenting a few words on the same note, when really you want that to be like one line, one smooth line. Let's see what the words were. Che tremano. It's like a little bit accented. Che tremano, che tremano. You want it to be super, 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 super legatissimo, unless it's written otherwise. Like if it's written with a staccato, or it's written with like a rubato. Ba, 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 ba might be more important, but so these are like very tiny details I'm pointing out between like what Rob's doing and what you would want to hear in a professional operatic tenor. Just a little bit smoother accents, or really probably no accents aside from the clear diction. A lot to talk about. Saddle up, everybody. Here we go. Beep boop pop. Okay. Ma il mio mistero chiuso è a me, I think is what he's saying. Okay, so right off the bat, you can hear Austin's background in musical theater and country right off the bat, because what he has a crazy amount of that forward space, that brightness, that cut in the sound, which you need. You absolutely need that when singing opera. No question. What he doesn't have any of is that backspace, is that pharyngeal space. So his larynx is in the same position as when he was singing anything with home free or musical theater, high larynx position, and generally spread vowels, right? If for musical theater, it's more speech-like, it's this way a lot. It's much more horizontal, whereas opera is much more vertical, which is to help structure a vocal tract which creates that tall, warm, dark sound, as opposed to a more of a bright, more natural. Like singing musical theater objectively is more natural than singing opera. All the shit we do as opera singers is like very unnatural to the voice. It's like totally nuts. So he's got the chiaro part nailed. What we need from Austin's voice, or what we would like to hear in Austin's voice, is that scuro, that darkness. My mio. I would like to hear more. The word is mio. Mio. There's generally when you're performing an opera, as long as you can get away with it with how it's written, and any composer will say yes, even if they didn't write it. Like if they wrote mio, I haven't seen this. I don't know what the score says, but it's probably 2/8 notes or 2 quarter notes. Mio, mio. But to be true to the language, the singer has the artistic freedom to go mio, mio, really 2/3 to 1/3 ratio, because that's how it would be spoken, with an accent on the penultimate syllable. Mio, mio. So Austin here goes mio, mio, which is, I remember, that's something I used to do when I was starting out singing opera, is like not know how the words are supposed to sound, because it's not, our native language. Growing up as Americans. And I'm still not fluent in Italian by any means, but I have learned the diction really well, because you have to sound fluent when performing. Just one thing about diction. That's it.
Ma il mio mistero è chiuso
So again, here you can tell on that. Now he has good focal vocal closure always in his upper range. I've commented on that before. He has really good on Q. Listen how freaking pure that vocal efficiency is on Q zoyame. But then when he goes down to the me, it's like the support drops out and the vocal folds get much more slack and a lot more air comes through. Really, you'd want to maintain that through the whole phrase at all times unless making a very intentional artistic choice. Because if you do that on an operatic stage with orchestra and you make that choice, you will not be heard. Those last few notes will not be heard by anyone in the audience because you have to maintain some semblance of cut in the sound unless the orchestra completely cuts out for a second. Then you can do whatever you want. Chiuso a me. And it gets chiuso a me. When you want chiuso a me, chiuso a me, you want to maintain that closure all the way down through the phrase. And then you can tail off. Chiuso a me. But you want to land so that the audience knows it's not a vocal thing, it's an artistic choice. It's like, no, I can put the efficiency in there, or I can back out for autistic reasons. For artistic reasons. Autistic reasons? God. Doesn't it mio? Mio, nessun. Nessun has two S's. So really, if you can, you want to linger on those double consonants a lot in Italian. Nessun. Nessun dorma. Nessun dorma. Mio. Nessun dorma. You don't want to go, like Austin just kind of went, nessun, 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 nessun. Even just lingering on it for a second acknowledges that there's a double consonant there. And that's important because unless you're fluent in the language and you know the differences, often if you sing a single consonant when there's supposed to be a double or vice versa, you might be singing a totally different word. You know, nessun dorma means never sleep. Like in this case, it's stay up all night and I'm awaiting my victory. I don't know what nessun, or it would be nesun, because a single S intervocably would be a Z in Italian. I don't think that's a word, but it's something to keep in mind. If there's a double or a single, you want to make sure you're adhering to that because you might be changing the meaning of the word entirely. So what he's doing here is fine. Bocca. It's an open O vowel, bocca, and it's more. He's singing it more like bocca. Totally fine. When you get up to a high A and above, you know, high A through high C for tenors, it's going to go and like S. And if you watch Pavarotti sing this, the high B, it's very open and wide because that vowel is the ideal position for that pitch. And that comes down to a whole sciencey thing I'm not going to get into. So what he's doing now, opening up more from an A to an A, more like an A, is totally fine, totally a reasonable thing to do on those high notes. He spreads a little, he gets a little too far this way on that second ba, and you can kind of feel the sound drop and the efficiency kind of goes away a little bit. He does a good job on that first note. Really good vocal fold closure, good presence. Always we can use more in Austin's sound for opera. We can use a lot more, just like really relaxation, breathing really deep to get everything settled. You know, approaching it. It's a very different approach, singing opera and singing anything else. It's from the ground up. You got to like breathe all the way from your toes so you're really settled to produce a huge, efficient sound. But anyway, the vocal efficiency on this first high A is very nice. You can hear though, it's all right here. It's very it's pressed via the throat, which is when I'm singing high notes in my covers, I'm not thinking as much about all the operatic technique. It's often, if you bring too much of that into a non-operatic cover, it can sound like shit and can sound really weird. Part of this is like healthy yelling almost. But you can tell it's throaty. So it's like he sends the air and then grabs here. And because he's a really talented singer, he can make these notes happen and he can put vibrato into it, but it's not the same kind of free, like easy flowing vibrato that you hear in Rob's voice when he's doing it. I'm being very critical of Austin because it's the main reason being is just his style is so different from opera and what you hear in the song and professional singer. I still think he's doing a fantastic job for not being trained as an opera singer. They both are, totally. I mean, this is still almost no one who doesn't sing opera could even hack their way through this aria with any kind of quality. This is still pleasant to listen to, which is saying a lot. So I am being critical, but it's mostly just because there are so many fundamental differences between how you would approach this song as an opera singer versus how Austin's approaching it with his background. That's it, y'all. I'm gonna highlight this again. Super, super good, great vocal fold closure on that whole top passage. But when it gets down to Luce, it gets much more breathy. Pure. Oh, see the vocal folds they're just not coming together like they were up top. So that's something you have to train. And like I said earlier, not all operatic tenors maintain that because they're really, the money notes are the high notes. So if you don't sound great on the bottom, no one really gives a shit. As long as that high B natural at the end sounds incredible. But it's just worth pointing out. It's interesting. It's it's a different skill to get good vocal fold closure up top as it is to get good vocal fold closure at the bottom. That is a choice. Not uncommonly done, actually. Yeah, definitely. Tenors definitely scoop up to that note. Austin did it in a way that was kind of like full on breathy, and then scooped into a more a position with better Oh boy, hold on! I gotta make a second video because mine's about to run out of juice. All right, and we're back. Camera only records for half an hour. I don't know what I was saying, but let's keep going. All right, so he scoops up really breathy. And then kind of goes into a more efficient sound there, but it starts off like... It's just interesting. Interesting choice. Again, an open O, splendero. It's a little more... It's fine. It sounds good. No, it's... Honestly, if you open up the open O's, splendero, so this is future tense. That open O at the end with the accent and future tense in Italian is open O. Splendero. If you open it up more towards it's totally fine. People do it all the time. It really, when Rob gets up top, it really goes into a beautiful place, and it's a great balance of the brightness. It's a great chiaroscuro sound. It just is. I don't know what the volume is like. I don't know what it would be like live, but in this recording, he gets up into that upper, around his secondo passaggio or higher, And it just goes right in that pocket, right in that really nice place where you've got all the backspace you need, but you're keeping the presence in the sound. It's really solid. Like, listen to this whole phrase. The high note of this phrase sounds the best by far. That high note, it's not just because it's the high note and it's like the climax of the phrase. He is singing that note 3 times as good as he sings any other note in this phrase. Listen to the quality. Listen to the purity of it and the balance of it. And when I say in the pocket, try to like feel what that means. Putting a note right in the pocket. Right up, it's like right up here. You got all this space up here, this backspace, but then you also have this nice forward presence. It's great. See how free that is? Familia. It's just so free. And, again, this is a place, I don't know exactly what the writing for the orchestra is. If they can taper down enough to allow this kind of breathy approach that Rob is finishing on. But he just has such great freedom in his sound. There's nothing grabbing. Nothing. It's just it's breath support to vocal folds. It's like I said. I mean, I really think he could have been an opera singer, straight up. If he's doing this with very little training, it's remarkable. And I like how he tapered off. Before they go up, let's start with this. I think I've touched on most of this. It's the same thing I was saying earlier with Austin. Excellent vocal fold closer. I mean, he has fantastic chiaro. Fantastic chiaro. The sound is here. It's buzzing. It's crystal clear. The vocal folds are like this, which is what you need to cut through an orchestra. I just want to hear more body. Because what's happening is, like I said, he's getting the breath support and then it's clenching here. And so the vocal folds are getting really tight, but we're not getting that what we want. It's like a very full-bodied, free sound that has both the cut and the body to it. You got, even as an operatic tenor singing the high shit, you got to have body to your sound. Have to. It's what gives it that really nice chiaroscuro quality. That opened up to a nicer place. The sun was pretty constricted. You could hear that. Listen to the difference between Nessun on that ooh and then sapra. Listen to the difference in freedom in those notes. The Nessun is clenched and the sapra is much more free, which could have to do with vowels. Generally, country music singers and musical theater singers are very comfortable on the open vowels. It's interesting because Rob so far has had less good closure on his open vowels. Austin here, it seems he can kind of get good vocal fold closure anywhere because like naturally that's something that's in his voice. It's just it's a more focused period. Like even when they're singing in Home Free, Austin's voice is a more focused sound. It's a more pointed sound. And that really just comes down to placement and vocal fold closure. Austin has like world-class vocal fold closure. I love that line. So here, in this recording, it sounds like their voices are the same volume. I would bet a unless Rob is like totally like just relying on head resonance, in which case you can sing high notes pretty cleanly without much volume. But I'm assuming he's bringing a good amount of chest up, because when you sing this operatically, you need to bring a lot. It needs to be very chest dominant, or you're not going to get the volume that you need. So I'm guessing in person, if Rob is singing it how it sounds like he's singing it, that Rob's voice is actually way louder on those high notes than Austin's. Now, Austin's, I bet, still have as much, if not more, of that chiaro scuro, but Rob has a good amount of the chiaro and a ton of that body. So he's got the chiaro scuro big time. Great tongue position for both of them. Neither one of them have even a hint of tongue tension, which is great and is so common in opera singers of all kinds, because when we're trained to get this warm, dark sound, tongue tension helps you get that warm, dark sound, but only in your own head, because it blocks more of the sound energy in. So in your head, you're like, oh my gosh, I sound so warm and awesome. But really, to the audience, you just sound muffled. They've got great tongue position. I don't hear an ounce of tongue tension in either one of their voices, which is great. Most singers struggle with tongue tension. These two don't. Oh, harmony. A harmony there. Never heard that before, because it's a solo piece. I kind of like it. It's cool. They're doing their own thing. Look at the difference in these. I know I'm pausing right around the climax, but y'all have watched this before. You don't need to watch it for the first time with me doing it. If you're still here, you've already dealt with a lot of analysis. Just look at these different mouth positions here. Austin's like this, and Rob's going much more the vertical. That plays into the sound, period. Even if Austin didn't do anything else here, but just had a more vertical mouth position, it would sound more operatic than it has been. So Austin makes a huge difference. Huge difference in terms of the color. Okay, I'll let the whole thing play through, and then we'll go back. Yeah, dude. Again, it's tough to hear the exact qualities of the two singers when they're together, especially when they're perfectly balanced. But you listen carefully towards your left ear in the original. Mine records in mono. You won't hear it as well. You can tell he's got the right placement. He's got a really nice placement for that high B natural. Sick, man. I want to hear him alone on that, honestly. And Austin, again, to his credit, I mean, we lose sight nowadays talking about vocal ranges and all this stuff. Singing a sustained B4, a high B in chest, is a really hard thing to do, especially to do it and to not have it be completely a scream fest. To sing with any kind of beauty and quality is really remarkable. A high B natural in chest is high for a trained opera singer. And they're both doing it. And Austin's doing it much more like a musical theater singer here. But nonetheless, how often do you hear, I don't know, huge, high, sustained B naturals in musical theater? Probably not often. Less often than in opera, probably not often. And, I mean, he's got the note. Like, there's no question about that. It's just a matter of how he's producing it versus how Rob is. solid. Really, really solid. Okay. So, they did a really, really excellent job for people who are not opera singers. And especially Rob, I think I've made my opinion on that. It's not even really an opinion. I'm being very objective about how they're using vocal technique. Rob, really remarkable. I mean, really could have been a professional opera singer if he chose that path. I think he has a beautiful natural sound. I think he has a really great idea about the balance between the pharyngeal space and the brightness in the sound, the chiaroscuro. He does that super well. He has great breast support and freedom to his sound. It's all the things that are so fundamental to being successful as an opera singer that he has going for him. And he really sounds far better than I would have expected and genuinely impressed me in that way. Does he sound as good as a professional operatic tenor singing this nowadays? No. Could he? If he just focused on opera for a few years? Probably. It's really, his voice is it's all there. It would just need some polishing. If he came and studied with my teacher for a few years, man, who knows? Maybe I'll reach out to him. That'd be really an interesting thing. Austin, incredibly talented, world-class vocal fold closure. He has all the chiaro in the world. Again, if Austin came and trained with my voice teacher and helped him maintain some of that body and support and fullness in his sound while maintaining that cut, it'd be great. I'd love to hear it. It'd be awesome. So I guess my whole point is they did a fantastic job, but I wanted to be sure to highlight what is different about their singing versus what you'd expect in a professional opera singer or what you hear when Pavarotti sings. So I mean, the big difference between Pavarotti is pretty much a perfect singer. I mean, one of the greatest tenors of all time. He's my favorite tenor of all time. It's just he maintains the body and that sound, the constant legato, legato, legato all the time. Crazy amount of vocal fold closure. This is something about Pavarotti is that he didn't have a big voice naturally, in a natural sense, but he had an absurd amount of cut and bite in his sound. And a lot of instructors at my institution got to hear him live and got to work with him, among many other world-class singers. And something they said is that if you were sitting in the back of the Metropolitan Opera House and Pavarotti was singing, it would sound like he was standing right next to you, because he had such high harmonic content in the sound, which is what the human ear is so attuned. 3K hertz to 5K hertz. We're very attuned to that, those frequencies. It sounded like he was sitting in the chair next to you. But if you're right next to him on stage, it still wasn't loud, it's pretty amazing. Sometimes you'll hear a big, woofy, bass voice honking away, and if they might sound like a literal god in a small room because they're producing so much volume. But if they don't have cut in the sound, you will not hear them in the back of the house because the orchestra will drown them out. It's amazing. I've seen it before. I was in a competition one time, and I remember hearing a guy in the semifinals, and I was like, this is the biggest voice I've ever heard in person. And he made the finals, and I did not. And I went to the finals, and you could barely hear him against the orchestra. And I was like, interesting. That was my first, wow, a cut is really important in opera. You don't even need a big voice. You just need an incredibly efficient sound. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I was going to do this in under half an hour, but as soon as I got started, it's there's no way I'm taking under half an hour to break down an operatic aria. There's just not. There's too much to talk about. And this is really, what I did today is just barely scratching the surface. So if you're still here and you want to hear me talk for even longer about this kind of thing, by all means, comment below. Otherwise, I'm going to get out of here. It's been about 45 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed this extensive but not exhaustive breakdown. I hope you learned a lot. That's always my goal here. Honesty and education. That's what it is. I'm sure I hurt some people's feelings who are super fans of these guys just because I was being critical in a way, constructively critical, I would say. But people are going to get offended, and that's okay. I would rather be honest and be educational than try to please everybody. So if you're still here and you like what I'm doing, stick around. A lot more like this coming. Like, subscribe. Please join my Patreon. Help support me as a young artist, a young singer, a young music producer. And that's all, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Bravo to Austin and Rob. You guys crushed it, for real. Peace.